My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 39 years old, and for the last decade, I've been the one who always answered. Every call, every late night emergency, every rent payment that couldn't wait. From my modest apartment in Portland, Oregon, I worked double shifts, sometimes weekends, just to make sure the lights stayed on in a house I hadn't stepped foot in for years. But when I finally came home, unannounced, uninvited, just quietly hoping to surprise my dad, I walked into silence. No lights, no scent of my mother's favorite apple pie, just the sound of my own heartbeat, echoing louder with each step into the empty foyer. I stood there, suitcase still in hand, staring at the spot where our Christmas tree always stood. There was nothing, not even a folded blanket on the couch. The whole house felt like it had exhaled and decided not to breathe again. The cab that had dropped me off was already turning the corner. I pulled out my phone. 2 bars. I dialed my mom. Straight to voicemail. My brother Adam? No answer. My sister Natalie? Same thing. Maybe they were out. Grocery shopping, visiting neighbors, or maybe... Then across the street I saw her. Mrs. Delaney. Still walking her golden retriever at dusk, just like always. She smiled and waved as she crossed. Elena? Oh my goodness, you're back. I forced a polite smile. Yeah, just got in. Her face lit up in that kind neighborly way. I figured you'd gone with them. My eyebrows furrowed. Gone where? To Mexico, she said casually, adjusting her scarf. Your mom said the whole family was headed there for the holidays, some fancy beach resort. I thought maybe you just arrived late. My mouth went dry. Mexico? Yeah, Cabo or Cancun, one of those. They left a few days ago. Then her tone shifted. Oh, honey, didn't you know? I shook my head slowly, and that's when she added, almost as an afterthought. Also, I hope it's nothing serious, but I saw an ambulance here a couple weeks ago. Your dad. He collapsed. They rushed him to County Memorial. I assumed someone told you. Everything inside me paused. I couldn't even feel my hands anymore. I whispered, County Memorial? She nodded, her voice soft now. I'm sure he's okay, sweetheart. They didn't say much, just that it was his heart. Thank you, I murmured. I turned back to the house, my childhood home, and in that moment, it wasn't just empty. It was haunted by everything they chose not to say. My chest tightened as I stepped back onto the curb, flagged down another cab, and climbed in. To County Memorial, I said. The driver didn't ask questions. He just pulled away. As we drove, I looked back one last time. The windows dark, the door closed. No footprints, no signs anyone had been there in days. They went to paradise and left my father behind. But this time, I wasn't staying quiet. Absolutely. Here's the continuation with, the ride to County Memorial felt longer than it should have. Maybe it was the weight pressing down on my chest, or maybe it was the silence, broken only by the steady hum of the heater and the occasional honk outside. The cab weaved through evening traffic, streetlights flickering against the windows like quiet warnings. When we finally pulled up to the ER entrance, I thanked the driver and stepped out, gripping the small gift bag I had carried all the way from Portland. Inside was a bottle of my dad's favorite cologne, the one he wore every Sunday morning. I'd wrapped it during a night shift at the diner, thinking how surprised and happy he'd be when I walked through the door. Now it felt like a relic from another life. I walked through the automatic doors and was immediately hit by the harsh fluorescent lights, the scent of antiseptic, and the murmur of lives suspended in waiting. People filled the chairs, some curled up in hoodies, others nervously pacing or whispering into phones. At the front desk, a nurse looked up. Her smile was professional, tired. Hi, I said, voice cracking more than I expected. I'm looking for a patient, James Brooks. He was brought in a couple of weeks ago. She typed something into her computer, her brows drawing together. Then she looked up. He's still here, ICU, 6th floor. He was brought in after collapsing at home. I felt like I'd swallowed a stone. I'm his daughter. Her eyes softened. No one's been to visit. Not once. That sentence hit harder than anything else I'd heard all day. I nodded silently as she handed me a visitor pass and buzzed the elevator. I thanked her, though I barely heard myself speak. In the elevator, I clutched the pass like it might hold me together. As the numbers climbed, 2, 3, 4, I stared at my reflection in the brushed metal walls, pale, tired, older than I remembered. 6th floor, ICU. The doors slid open. The hallway was quiet, the kind of quiet that carries weight. I walked slowly, reading the room numbers. 618, 620, there, room 623. I stood outside the door, unable to breathe for a second. Then I stepped in, and I froze. The man lying in that bed didn't look like my father. His cheeks were hollow. His skin had taken on that strange pale tone that only hospitals could produce. Tubes snaked into his arms. A ventilator breathed for him in mechanical rhythm. His hand was bound loosely to the rail, probably to keep him from pulling the mask off if he stirred. He didn't stir. I took a shaky step forward, pulled the plastic chair closer to his bedside, and sat. My knees almost gave out. "Dad," I whispered. Nothing, just the sound of the machine. I reached out and placed my hand gently over his. His skin felt cold, thin, breakable. I swallowed hard. "It's me," I said, barely able to get the words out. "I'm here." Still nothing. The tears came slowly. No sobs, no dramatics, just a quiet stream that wouldn't stop. I sat with him like that, for minutes or hours, I couldn't tell. The hospital world blurred around me. The only real thing was the slow rise and fall of his chest, assisted by a machine that didn't know me, that didn't know him. Then a soft knock at the door. It was the nurse from downstairs. "I didn't want to interrupt," she said quietly, "but I thought you should know." She explained that when my dad was admitted, he was unconscious. They had no emergency contact listed except one number under the title spouse. They called it several times. No one came. "Did you say who it was?" I asked. "Vera Brooks. Your mother?" I nodded slowly. My stomach clenched. She continued gently. "Your father suffered a mild stroke. His vitals are stable, but his condition is delicate. Without intervention, it could have gone much worse." I thanked her, my voice barely audible. She gave me a warm look and quietly left, closing the door behind her. I turned back to him. "They knew," I whispered. "They knew. And they left you." I pulled the gift bag from my lap and set it on the windowsill. The red tissue paper looked too bright, too loud. He didn't need cologne. He needed a presence, someone to hold his hand, someone who hadn't forgotten him. I looked at my phone. Still no messages, no calls. No one even knew or cared that I was back. But I wasn't leaving. Not this time, of course. Here is the continuation. Morning came like an afterthought. The sky outside turned a dull gray, casting faint light over the hospital floor. I hadn't slept, not even a little. My back ached from the stiff chair, but I refused to move. The nurses rotated in and out, checking machines, whispering updates to clipboards, but no one disturbed me. Maybe they saw it in my face. This wasn't just a visit. This was a reckoning. Around 7 a.m., I walked down the hall and splashed cold water on my face in the restroom. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Puffy eyes, pale skin, lips pressed tight to keep from shaking. But beneath that was something new. Resolve. Back in Dad's room, everything looked the same. Except me. I sat down again, then opened my laptop and scrolled to my banking app. I hesitated only for a breath before tapping into the shared family account, the one I'd been feeding for years. The numbers hit like a slap. Tens of thousands gone in the last 3 weeks alone. Plane tickets, five-star resorts, designer boutiques, even a charge from a luxury spa in Cabo. It was all there. Proof in pixels. That money had been for medications, for groceries, for keeping the lights on in the house my father now no longer even occupied. And instead, they'd used it to sip cocktails under palm trees while he lay here on life support. I sat back in my chair. The gift bag was still on the windowsill. My father's chest still rose and fell in artificial rhythm. Then I made a choice. I froze the account. One tap. Confirmed. Just like that, every linked card was dead. No more charges, no more beachside luxury on my dime. The silence in the room felt different now. And it didn't take long. Exactly 48 minutes later, my phone began to buzz. First my mom, then my brother, then an unknown international number, probably the hotel. The voicemails poured in. Elena, what's going on? Our cards aren't working. Call the bank. Why are you doing this to us? Call us back now. We're stranded. I didn't call back. I didn't even listen to the rest of the messages. I just let the phone buzz on the table while I sat next to my father, who hadn't made a sound in 2 weeks. He didn't need to. His silence said enough. When the chaos quieted, I reached for his hand and held it in mine. I froze it, I whispered. They're panicking. He didn't move, but I imagined, just faintly, that if he could have smirked, he would have. Then I noticed the worn leather bag tucked beneath the side table. I pulled it into my lap. Inside, old receipts, medical notes, his journal. I flipped through the journal gently. Toward the back, scrawled in his neat, slow handwriting, was a single line. If Elena comes, don't tell her. Let her see for herself. My breath caught. He knew. He knew they'd hide the truth. He knew I'd come anyway. And he left that line, not as instruction, but as a challenge. A quiet reminder that I wasn't just his daughter. I was the one who'd show up even after everything. Absolutely. Here is the continuation. By mid-afternoon, the buzz of my phone had turned relentless. Missed calls stacked like accusations, voicemails filled with panic, blame, manipulation, and finally, rage. The one from my mother said it all. You ungrateful little brat! I gave you life and this is how you repay me? Your father would be ashamed. Fix it. Now. I didn't even flinch. That voicemail wasn't a plea. It was a threat dressed in motherhood. There was no guilt in her voice, no remorse, just fury that I dared to pull away from their script. I walked out of the ICU and into the hospital cafe, ordered a black coffee, then sat in the far corner, away from everyone. My laptop came open like second nature. I opened the bank records again, this time line by line. Spa appointments under Adam's name, jewelry from a boutique in San Francisco, an absurd charge for resort butler services. The kicker? An airline transaction labeled priority emergency booking made 3 days after Dad was hospitalized. They knew, and they still left. They used everything I gave them. Every dollar scraped from overtime shifts, every skipped birthday weekend, every ramen dinner I ate to send a little more just in case. And they didn't even call when my father collapsed. They left him on a lawn, and they left me holding the bag. I wasn't going to hold it anymore. I pulled up my father's old attorney and my contacts. Mr. Raymond, a man with a firm handshake and the kind of face that had seen families come undone and never blinked. I wrote the email slowly, carefully. I included every detail. Dad's condition, the family's absence, the financial sabotage. And I ended it with a single line. They used him. And now they want to use me. I won't let them. Not anymore. I hit send. And for the first time since I'd walked into that hospital, I didn't feel helpless. I felt anchored. Back in Dad's room, the machines beeped steadily. His chest still rose and fell with the rhythm of borrowed breath. I took his hand again. They're going to hear you now, Dad, I whispered, Through me. The next morning, just after sunrise, my phone lit up. One email, subject, Directive Authorization, James Brooks. Mr. Raymond had replied, Elena, your father signed a directive 2 months ago assigning you full authority over all medical and financial matters in the event he became incapacitated. Your mother and siblings were explicitly removed from all roles of power of attorney and estate control. He asked that we act only if you contacted us personally. We are prepared to begin proceedings immediately. I sat in stunned silence, not because I had control, but because he had seen this coming. He'd known exactly what they were capable of, and he trusted only me to carry what mattered most. Tears welled up, not from grief this time, but from recognition. My father hadn't just loved me. He had believed in me. Absolutely. Here's the next part of the rewritten story. 2 days later, I stood on the marble steps outside Sacramento Family Court. The air was sharp with cold, but I didn't shiver. I wore the same black blazer I hadn't touched since a friend's funeral. Simple, serious, respectful. But today, it wasn't mourning that brought me here. It was justice. Inside, the courtroom was quiet. My heels echoed as I walked to my seat, alone. Across the aisle, Vera and Adam sat at the plaintiff's table dressed like they were attending a business luncheon instead of a legal hearing. My mother's pearl necklace gleamed, but her eyes were tired. Adam looked like he hadn't slept. Their attorney, a slick man with perfect posture and an expensive watch, looked me over with the kind of smirk that assumes money always wins. Let him smirk. Judge Eleanor Clean entered with a brisk nod. Late 60s, silver hair, no-nonsense presence. I liked her instantly. Mr. Raymond began calmly, laying out the facts. Dad's condition, the lack of contact from next of kin, the bank records, the hospital records. Then he placed the notarized directive on the bench, the one my father signed giving me full authority over everything. I sat still, hands folded, breathing steady. Then it was their turn. Adam stood first, buttoned his coat, smiled like he was auditioning for a political ad. Your Honor, my sister has a history of emotional instability. We've always supported her through her outbursts. This is just another— Objection, Raymond said sharply, irrelevant and unsubstantiated. Judge Clean didn't even blink. Mr. Brooks, we are here to discuss the facts of your father's care, not your sister's mental health. Proceed accordingly or sit down. Adam's jaw twitched. He sat. Then it was Vera's turn. I raised that girl, she began with a voice made for dramatics. I carried her, paid for her braces, her music lessons, her education, and now she locks me out of my own husband's— Judge Clean raised a hand. Mrs. Brooks, you've been named in financial records tied to unauthorized withdrawals from a shared account. Do you deny using funds meant for your husband's care on personal travel and luxury services? Silence. I did what I had to do. We needed a break, she finally muttered. The judge didn't respond. She just wrote something on her notepad, then turned to Mr. Raymond. Is there any written opposition to the directive? No, Your Honor. Any medical objection? None. He remains unresponsive but stable. All medical documentation confirms Ms. Brooks has been the sole visitor and advocate since admission. The courtroom stilled. Judge Clean looked directly at me. Ms. Brooks, based on the documentation presented, the lack of challenge to the directive, and the financial misconduct demonstrated by the opposing parties, I am granting you full conservatorship of your father's medical and financial affairs. She turned to Vera and Adam. Effective immediately, you are barred from accessing any accounts, records, or making decisions on behalf of Mr. James Brooks without this court's prior written approval. Do you understand? Adam slumped. Vera crossed her arms. Neither spoke, but I did. Thank you, Your Honor. And with that I stood, calm, measured. I gathered my things, walked past them without a glance, and stepped into the sunlight outside. My phone buzzed. Vera. I let it ring. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protecting the only person who ever truly saw me. Absolutely. Here's the next part of the rewritten script. 2 weeks later, I stood inside a modest rented hall tucked behind a local veterans memorial park. There were no marble statues or velvet ropes, just folding chairs, oak trees in the distance, and a winter wind that made the wooden sign for the George Brooks Dignity Fund sway slightly in the cold. The front table held a single framed photo. My father in his army uniform, standing tall and proud, years before I was born. Next to it, I placed a folded American flag, his old watch, and a copy of the mission statement I'd written. To restore dignity to elderly patients left alone in hospitals, forgotten by families who should have done better. Only 7 chairs were filled. A nurse from the ICU, Mr. Raymond, the neighbor who had called 911, and a man in his 60s who introduced himself as my dad's former army buddy. He'd driven 3 hours just to be there. Not a single blood relative was invited. Still, they came. From inside, I saw Vera and Adam lingering near the door, bundled in designer coats. They looked uncomfortable, not from the cold, but from exclusion. They approached the security guard at the entrance like they were entitled to walk right in. "We're his family," Vera snapped. "I'm sorry," the guard said firmly, holding the guest list. "Private event. You're not on here." Adam protested, but the guard stood his ground. I turned away before I could see their faces as the door closed gently behind them. Inside, I stepped up to the small podium and faced the people who truly mattered. "He didn't want applause," I began, voice clear but soft. "He never asked for attention. My father found peace in the simple things: morning walks, crossword puzzles, hot coffee, and quiet loyalty." I paused. "He taught me that dignity isn't something you can buy or inherit. It's something you hold on to when the world tries to take it from you. That's what this is about. Not just honoring his life, but protecting others like him who've been left behind by the people meant to love them most." No one clapped. They didn't have to. After the service, I walked over to the coat rack where his old winter jacket hung. The fabric was faded at the elbows. One pocket had been stitched with a slightly different thread. My stitching from years ago, when I was 16, and learning how to sew. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded note I had written the night before. It read, "You were right. I had to see it with my own eyes. But now, I see everything." I tucked it into the inner pocket and gently patted the seam closed. That night, I drove back to my apartment in Portland, hung the jacket by the door. I didn't wash it, didn't fold it away. I left it exactly as it was, still carrying the faint scent of his aftershave and the wind from that final afternoon under the oak tree. The apartment felt quieter now, not empty, just still, like it was waiting to be filled with something new. The next morning, I went back to work. Not my old job, not the side gigs I juggled to keep everyone else afloat. I worked on the foundation, his foundation. In just 4 weeks, the George Brooks Dignity Fund helped 8 elderly patients abandoned in hospitals across the state. One got new glasses, another, a warm coat. One veteran, like my father, was given hospice care he never would have received otherwise. It wasn't grand, but it was real. And it was his legacy. Certainly. Here's the final part of the rewritten voiceover script. It's strange how grief settles in, not like a storm, but like fog. You don't always see it coming, but once it arrives, everything feels softer, quieter. My apartment still echoes sometimes with the ghosts of what could have been. The hallway's a little too silent, the night's a little too still, but I've learned to sit with it, not to escape it, just to understand it. And still, I walk past that jacket every morning and I don't touch it. I don't need to. It's not a shrine. It's a presence. Some days I catch myself talking to it, whispering little updates like, "We got 2 more applications this week," or "Someone wrote a thank you note for the warm socks we sent." He never asked for recognition, but if anyone deserves to be remembered for showing up, it's him. Last Tuesday, I was sorting mail when I found an envelope with no return address. My chest tightened when I saw the handwriting. It was Vera's. Inside, a single note. 5 words. "I was wrong. I lost you." No apology, no explanations, no request for forgiveness. But somehow, those 5 words landed harder than any voicemail, any courtroom lie, any sob story she'd ever spun. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I took the note, slid it into the back of Dad's journal, right next to the page that said, "Let her see for herself." It didn't belong on display, and it didn't belong in the trash. It belonged exactly where I put it. Part of the story, but not the ending. Later that week, I visited the garden behind the Veterans Hall. His plaque was still clean. Someone had left a small laminated card that read, "You were loved, even when forgotten." No signature, no flowers, just that. I didn't cry. I sat on the bench nearby, closed my eyes, and breathed in the rosemary bushes and cold, damp air. I imagined his voice, steady, patient, kind. I think he would have said, "You did good, kid." And this time, I would have believed him. Back home, I boiled water for tea and walked into the kitchen. That's when I noticed a sticky note on the fridge. My handwriting, scribbled late at night, probably when I wasn't thinking. It said, "Love loudly, protect quietly, walk away when it's time." I didn't move it. Didn't need to. It was simple, not profound, but it was true. And sometimes, truth is all that's left. Sometimes it's all we need. Because in the end, family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when it matters. And this time, I showed up. Elena's story reminds us that loyalty isn't measured in blood. It's measured in presence, in action, in truth. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Have you ever been the one holding everything together, only to be forgotten? Tell us in the comments. Your voice matters here. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more true life tales of betrayal, justice, and the quiet power of choosing yourself. Because sometimes standing up for what's right means standing alone. And sometimes that's when we're strongest.